Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes, and I'd love to welcome here Ann Teato, and she is a psychic medium, a writer, a tutor, a voice artist, and you're a podcast host yourself.
I am. That's right, Kyle.
Well, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, it's lovely to be here, first of all. Hello, everyone who's listening. I am a psychic and a medium, so I teach people how to use the psychic mind. That's where I seem to find myself these days. So there's two things. There's psychic, which is feeling into using my energy to feel into the energy of the living person in front of me and giving them some guidance about obstacles they may have in their life and how to overcome them. And then there's mediumistic, which is where I use my energy to connect to the eternal consciousness of those who live in the spirit world. And I bring through whatever it is they want to say to the person sitting in front of me. So that's what I do. And I teach people how to do that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you get in an instance where you're just having a conversation with someone and all of a sudden an entity appears and says, hey, I got something to say?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. No, that's the answer. No, it doesn't happen like that. Occasionally I am chatting to someone and I may be aware of the presence of perhaps an animal, spirit animal, or a person. It's very, very occasional. But I wouldn't say anything to the person I'm talking to unless they've invited me to work in that way. So I think you have to have an ethic about it. You can't just go around pouncing on people saying somebody's standing behind you, they need to give you this message, because it's not fair on people and it's alarming for a lot of people. So no, you have to have an ethic about it.
How do you usually prepare yourself?
What, for my readings, Kyle?
Yes.
How do I prepare myself? I make sure I'm physically comfortable. Then I will, if I'm doing an online reading, I'll light a candle and then I'll just sit very peacefully for just a couple of minutes before I begin. I'd probably put on some lively music, actually, because it's quite an active process. So you don't want to be in a meditative state. You want to be in quite an active state. So I put on some happy, good vibes. There you go. Good vibe music. Yeah, in order to begin to work. Yeah, that's what I do.
And do you have to also unwind when you do things like that?
No, especially not when you're using your mediumship, because I find that you get held by the spirit world. And it's sometimes I might turn up to work and feel exhausted, not in the mood, not wanting to do it, various human reasons. And you find when you begin to work with the spirit world, it's such a beautiful feeling that flows through you. It's not of you, it flows through you and out. So when you're finished, you feel actually really at peace, and there's a sense of great healing, and there's a great sense of happiness about it. So you leave in a much better mood than when you arrived. So
How is it that a medium is able to connect with someone even if they're on the other side of the planet?
well, you can. Well, they can be on the other side of the planet, such as in Zoom. But we're talking about energy, Kyle. So I use my energy to talk to you now. You're on the other side of the world to me. Well, I actually don't know where you are. Where are you?
Just outside of Houston, Texas.
Oh, fine. Yeah, that's the other side of the world to me. I'm over in just outside London in the UK. So energy can connect with energy no matter where. So you just can.
Well, I want to get back to this, but I also wanted to talk to you. What actually do you write?
Ooh, now you're talking. Well, I have written many things in the past. So before I became a psychic and a medium, I was a scriptwriter and a writer for radio.
Oh.
And so I have written film scripts and scripts for TV. Let me be clear, nothing's been shown on TV. I've written them, but it didn't get past the censors. But I have got radio plays out there in the world and radio documentaries. I've won awards for that. And I've written a children's book, which is on Amazon called Bertie the Beach Hut. And that is actually a children's TV series in the making. And I'm currently about to start a stand-up comedy writing course. Would you believe that's something I'm about to go and do next. So yeah, there's a lot of strings to my bow. I like to live life pretty joyfully, and my mother said to me years and years ago, she was Irish, she said, you cannot spend your entire life having a laugh. You have to be serious. And I thought, well, no, you don't. You can actually have a really enjoyable, upbeat, happy life if you choose to do so. And that's what I choose.
Hmm. And you're a voice artist. That mean you do things like radio broadcasts and things like that?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so I do all kinds of different things, continuity for TV and radio. I've done lots of radio adverts, television adverts, things like that. And of course, am the voice in radio plays. So I play different characters. I've got a background in acting, so that's a real passion of mine still, which is why now I've just turned 60. I turned 60 last week. Gosh, what am I saying? Just last week. And because I've just turned 60, I'm taking stock of my life, Kyle. And if you've done this at certain parts in your life or your listeners have, you certainly get to a certain age, whatever it is, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And you just think, right, what am I going to do in the next decade? And so part of my soul's expression, definitely, I want to continue to teach people how to use the psychic mind. I'm fascinated by quantum science, the science of it, but there's other parts of me as well. So going back to the acting, it's always been a passion. I've put it on hold. I had children, of course, and so I had to put my focus on them. My mother and father got sick. I was looking after them. And now I'm at a stage in my life where I've still got my health and strength, I'm delighted to say. And so for the next decade, I want to fulfill some of these things that are still bubbling up inside of me that feel really, really important. One of which is writing, one of which is comedy, one of which is performance. So that's why I'm off to do the stand-up comedy course. So.
Well, you're living pretty good because I would have sworn you were younger than me.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's yeah, have more joy. Keeps you young.
And tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very kind of you for asking about that. My podcast is called Psychic Matters, and again, it teaches people how to use the psychic mind. And on there, I have solo shows, and I also interview people like you're interviewing me now, but I interview experts across the world for their spiritual wisdom, for their guidance, for their advice on various different topics. So I will interview people who are expert in mediumship or remote viewing or the psychic mind in some way. I also interview people like, I've done some really fascinating episodes with a lady who does soul midwifery. She sits with the dying and helps them have a beautiful transition from this world to the next. I interviewed a really interesting guy whose name was E3. That was his nickname, Ethan Sisser, and he was dying. He had a brain tumor and he had days to live, and he wanted to be on people's podcasts. And I was introduced to him, and he came on my podcast. And it was a really moving episode because we talked about my brother was dying at the same time of a brain tumor. So it was a very touching interview where I said to him, how can we let go of those people that we love so dearly? And he gave advice about that, and it was so moving. So the whole podcast is very, very interesting mix of different types of things. So that's what Psychic Matters is all about. And you know why I started it, Kyle? It's because I sat at home and I had all this talent as a voice artist and a writer and radio producer, and it's very difficult to get employment. The doors always seem to be closed to me when I'm knocking on doors. And so I thought, well, let me put this to good use because it's a skill and a talent and people will benefit from it if I put it in the right way. And you know what? They really have. And I've managed to make this really beautiful and successful little podcast, very niche in its own little way, but people are getting an awful lot out of it. And years ago, when I first trained as a psychic and a medium, well, of course, the internet didn't exist. Can you remember those days?
Yes, I
Maybe you're
do.
not old enough, but yeah, when the internet didn't exist and there were no barcodes, that's where I come from. But so you couldn't get information. If you wanted to get information, you had to go and buy a book. If you didn't have any money, you couldn't go buy a book, right?
Right.
So I was a single parent looking after my two children, and I had all these psychic perceptions and all this stuff going on around me where I was aware of the spirit world very close, and I didn't know what to do with it or how to make sense of it. Fast forward to me now, or 5 years ago, my podcast has just celebrated its fifth birthday. So 5 years
Congratulations.
ago, oh, thank you so much. I started the podcast 5 years ago for the specific purpose of people like me who may be looking after children, who may be looking after their elderly parents, and who can't get to a class, or who live in parts of the world where there is no training, people don't want to talk about having a psychic mind. It's frowned upon. We get such ridicule from people, so many skeptics out there. And so it's difficult to find a place to go to learn. So that's why I started it as a free resource for people to listen to it and enjoy it without having to pay any money. There we are. That's why I've done it. Yeah.
I want to make a little observation. You were talking about helping people cross over and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
My wife and I were talking about death last night, and my observation, this is my opinion. I feel like we are here for other people. We're not particularly here for ourselves because being that I'm a big believer in God, I believe in heaven. I would rather be in heaven than living in this mess that we're living in right now. So I'm here and I take care of my grandson and my other two grandchildren. I'm here for them, and I'm here for my wife and of course my children, and I help take care of my mom. If it weren't for them, I would rather be in heaven. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So
do.
that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, and I hear you because life is so challenging. It's so difficult. And I think probably a lot of people listening have gone through their own dark nights of the soul as well. I think everybody does. There's no escape from it, unfortunately, and it never seems to let up.
Hmm.
So we have to try to find meaning in living here.
Exactly.
And what you said there is so important. Community and being there for other people is the important thing, is sharing that love and showing that love, not in flowery, oh, I love you, here's some flowers, but in small acts of kindness, smiling at somebody, maybe just helping someone across the street, mowing somebody's front lawn because they can't quite manage anymore. These tiny little things that give our life meaning and other people's as well, and coming together as a community. I just think we've lost that in so many ways. If we can try to get that back in some small way, even if you live in a big city, there's ways of connecting to other people, I think.
We've given up a lot of communication with other people for convenience. I mean, think about it. At least here, you go to the grocery store and they have the self checkouts and that kind of thing, and they're experimenting with being able to just walk through the door, and all of a sudden, this machine scans everything in your cart and takes your money out of your account, and you don't really have to deal with a human being. Preferably, I will go find a cashier. Maybe I stand in line for 5 or 10 minutes. That's fine. Sometimes it's frustrating, but it's fine. Just so I can talk with another human being. And you don't know what that person may be going through. They could be ready to end their own lives. And then you go and you say something to them that sparks them some joy and maybe want to keep going on. I love joking around with the person that's checking us out, and my favorite line is when they say, "Would you like your milk in a bag?" And I say, "No, I prefer to keep it in the jug. It's a lot less messy that way."
But it's those little interactions, isn't it, that make that bless our day, I think. And we have lost them to a certain extent through modern living, it's true. And we've become very isolated, I think. Like you say, everything's been sort of taken away from us. Over here in the UK, there's a lot of small towns where a lot of the shops have little boutiques, and small individual shops have gone now because they can't afford the rates. And so the heart of town centres here has gone. We do our shopping online, and all these little interactions that you've just spoken about, these little hello, how are yous, just fall by the wayside, and we become so lonely. And that's the thing. We must reach out to our friends, to our neighbours. I just got together with friends there for my 60th birthday. Bless them all for coming out to play. We had a great time. But when I stood in that room for a moment, I looked around and there were 9 of my friends from my secondary school. So we've known each other since we were 10 years old. And I looked at them and I thought, you've got this issue, you've got that problem, you've got these awful things going on. And everybody had things going on. But the feedback after that party was we had such a good time, and just getting together and letting off a bit of steam and having a laugh, not talking about your problems or your issues, but just getting together as a community of people or friends and sharing some fun and some banter and some laughter. It's really healing. So that little exchange you have there with your cashier, it's so important. It's really healing.
Do you work with people individually, helping them with honing in on abilities?
Yeah, I do. I do private coaching if people request it. So you can get a 20-minute free discovery call with me anytime. Just go to my website and check that out and book in with me, and we can see where you might go with your skills. So I do work one-on-one with people, but I also teach a lot of classes, and everything I teach, most things I teach are online. And I do a weekly development circle which takes place on a Friday night in the UK. And I teach people exercises in how to read for each other psychically. I might teach you how to, I'm holding up here for those of you that are listening and not watching on YouTube, a bottle of water. I might teach you how to read into that and use that water almost like a crystal ball. I might teach you how to do a doodle on a piece of paper and read it and get meaning out of it for your recipient. I might teach you how to use your mediumship, how to connect, how to attune to the energy of the spirit world and bring forward messages from people who the recipient would have loved in this lifetime. So all kinds of different things that I teach in classes, my own classes, and I also teach for different institutions. I teach for the Arthur Conan Doyle Centre in Edinburgh, and I teach online for the College of Psychic Studies in Kensington in London. So yeah, there's lots
Oh,
going on in my life.
the guy that wrote Tarzan and all those other books.
Yes, Sir Arthur Conan
Wow,
Doyle. That's right. Yes, yes, yes,
nice.
that's right. Yeah.
So, what is your website?
Oh, thank you. It's annteato.com. So that's my name, ANNTHEATO.com. And you can have a look on there. You'll find my podcast on there. You'll find my classes. And I also give a free demonstration of mediumship every single week on a Tuesday. So that takes place at 7 p.m. UK time. And that's 1 hour where you can watch me demonstrating mediumship. And I work with another very well established medium from somewhere across the globe. So I will do half an hour and my guest will do half an hour. And between us, we will contact the spirit world and give messages of love and guidance for those who come to the mediumship hour. So you can subscribe to that on my website and get your Zoom link sent to you each week. If your listeners fancy coming along, you'd be more than welcome. We'd love to have you there.
Where else can people catch your podcast?
So it's on YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel now, at Psychic Matters, it's called. And that's where you can watch it. I've got just a few episodes on there because I've only just sort of started that off since maybe October. So it's only about 6 months I've been putting content onto YouTube. So it's in its early days, and it's on every single podcast platform you could care to mention. So it's called Psychic Matters, and it's on Spotify and everywhere else, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Well, I will put your links in the description just to make it easier for folks to find you.
So kind
And
of you.
thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here, and thank you very much for having me on as a guest. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button for my regulars. You guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network